Well, you look at the final score and you're going to miss the story. 5-3 was the final, but wow.
Right? It's funny because we talked about it where the anticipation for the very first game of this series was through the roof. Shohei's coming back.
Yeah.
We saw two great games. And tonight, okay, 5-0 going into the ninth. This was unreal. The drama, all the ups and downs, the beanball stuff, the bench clearing, the fact we had an opportunity to win the game on the last pitch. Great series, great job by the Dodgers. Winning 3 out of 4, you got to be ecstatic.
So they go 17-12 in this 29-game stretch against nothing but contenders. And when you consider everything they were going through with the injuries, that's a really impressive run.
Well, it was an impressive run. And the thing about it, too, is there are a lot of guys that gained experience that normally wouldn't have these opportunities because they're getting chances. Guys are hurt. They're put in situations where, again, we've just had a run against a ton of teams that are over 500. So this is going to pay off later on in the season. It's been a great run. Let's continue it through the homestand.
All right, and a little lull in the schedule here, at least when you're looking at the teams they're going to play, some teams that are not contenders coming in. The Nationals in a 3-game series beginning tomorrow night.
Ready. Yoshi, just coming off of your last outing in which you had those 5 walks, how did you find just your command tonight and how you were feeling on the mound?
前回の登板で、フォアボールが多かったんですけども、そこから今日のゲームで調整してきて、今日の試合ってどういう感じでしたか、コマンド、制球とかに関しての部分で。
そうです、前回に比べて、いい投球は、すごく多かったと思いますし、でも先制点許したり、反省するところはたくさんありますけど、前回と比べると、良かったかなと思います。
I think compared to the last outing, it was good. I threw some good pitches. My command was good today. However, I gave up a first round of the game, and then there's some stuff I need to work on for the next one.
I know we've talked about just the lack of run support when you're on the mound. How does that, if so, change your approach in just recognizing that there is little margin of error?
Little margin?
Just no room for error in the sense of low, no run support, having to keep the game close.
前回ちょっとお話ししたんですけども、山本さんが投げるときにちょっと、援護が少ないかなというところで、もしそれが原因だとすれば、そういう、ゲームの中での自分のゲームに対するそのアプローチ、はどういうふうに変わってきますか。そういうミスをできないとかっていう部分で。
投球する心がけることには、内容は特に、変わりないですし、そうですね、特にそこは変わりないです。
I think whether I get a lot of run support or not, that doesn't really change my job. What I have to do is the same, still stay the same.
Is this what you've come to expect just from the intensity, I guess, the tension between these two teams in this matchup?
今日、そのサンディエゴとのライバル関係の部分でちょっと、緊迫したするゲームっていうところありますけど、そこに関してはどう思いますか。
そうですね、前回サンディエゴで試合した時も、そうですけど、また他の試合とはまた違った、雰囲気というか、こうなんていうか、熱い試合といいますか。そうですね、はい、そういったなんていうの、いつもと違う雰囲気というか、そういったのは、はい、感じたかなとは思います。
Just like we played in San Diego last week, and then I do feel there is some like a little bit like a different atmosphere, and then today, because I did feel some different atmosphere, air, and then there's a heated moment.
Some players still say that the Giants are the biggest rival, but does this, to you since you've been here, feel like maybe the biggest rival?
中にはサンディエゴとそのドジャースっていうのはそういう、ライバル関係じゃないっていう方もいらっしゃいますけども、山本さん自体はそこはどう感じますか。
そうですね、どうだろうな、同地区ですし、そうですね、なんていうのか、どちらもすごくいいチームですし、はい、難しいけど、はい、どうなのか分かんないです。はい。
Yes, we are in the same division. We're both good team, so I think because we're not we are like we're both team in the competitive positions.
Thanks, Hero. A couple questions.
Dave, I know we've talked a lot about just in this matchup and in this series kind of how the tension, the emotions have gotten high, intentional, non-intentional, things like that. But can you just kind of share your perspective of things that just kind of happened and how things escalated there with Shildt?
The way I see it, the way I saw it was Jack Little was making his major league debut, and he's trying to get through the outing, and we're trying to get him to finish the game. And obviously, the arm side miss to Iglesias, walks him, walks in a run, and then he hits Tatis with an arm side fastball. Obviously, I think anyone knows there was no intent, and I think even Mike speaking the other day talking about intent versus no intent, and so I think that anyone understands that there was no intent there. And even by my reaction, I didn't feel good about Tatis, a great player, good guy, getting hit. I didn't feel good about it, and so as he comes out and he's yelling at me and staring me down, that bothers me. Because, to be quite frank, that's the last thing I want. I'm taking starters out of the game and, trying to, get this game over and get this kid a couple innings. And so that's why I felt, I took that personal, because I understand the game and know that I understand it doesn't feel good to get hit, but understand, again, intent versus clearly no intent.
Do you think they threw it Shohei originally again?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's 3-0, and again, this is a right-handed pitcher going across the court to hit Shohei up and in. That's a hard throw, and I don't know how many left-hand hitters Suarez has hit with the fastball, but clearly there was intent behind it, and yeah.
You said before, like, that's baseball, but doing it sort of like twice in a week to the same guys, that sort of crossing the line for you?
Yeah, I mean, that's their decision, and Major League Baseball's going to have to look at that, and that's after warnings were issued. But I can honestly say that, none of the guys, and I know Tatis was hit 3 times in the last 7 games we played, there was not one intent. You don't want that guy on base. But yeah, he was hit. But that is baseball. But I know that there was no intent from any of our guys hitting their guys.
Do you think the emotions from this last week and change can kind of linger into, the future, possibly the next time?
I don't know. I hope, we're honestly trying to win baseball games, and that's our only goal. And so I can't speak to that. I do know that we don't see these guys for a long time, and we're just going to try to win as many games as we can before we see them again.
I assume that was Shildt that you were kind of going back.
Yeah. I just, I felt that, again, my reaction, getting hit, having Tatis get hit, I didn't feel good about it. I didn't, because I feel for the player, and I pray nothing, there's x-rays are negative and he's in there tomorrow. But I felt that he was trying to make it personal with me, which then I take it personal, and I just wanted to have a conversation.
How taxing were these 10 games against the Padres and Giants?
They were, I thought we played good baseball, and I think that, some of our guys didn't really perform well, and we still found a way to win, more than we lost, and I think that we fared really well during that stretch of baseball games. So now, for me, it's just kind of thinking about Mackenzie Gore and the Nationals, and a team that's been scuffling, but that's going to try to, make right by playing us. And so I think we did really well in that stretch.
Why was a 5-0 lead in the 8th inning time to pull the top of your lineup?
Yeah, well, I think that for me, you have a guy that, we're using a guy that makes his major league debut, and they were 1 hit away from making it 7-0, and we're in a stretch here of a lot of games, and I felt that, that was the right time. And to be quite frank, Miggy got on base a couple times, and you just don't know how the game's going to play out. And so, you look back, and we got their closer of the game, as it was in a 5-0 deficit, and we got Matsui in the game. So, in totality, being down 8-0 with, in the 8th inning, it's a pretty good outcome, actually.
Looked like Otani was kind of gesturing, motioning you guys to not come out on the field after you got hits. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think he knew it was intentional. He wasn't hurt by it, and he didn't want any more drama, which I respect that a lot.
He wasn't hurt by it and didn't get his record?
No, he was fine. He deflected it. He'll be just fine.
If you had waved you guys on the field to get you guys in charge?
Well, I wouldn't. I was in my office, so I don't know.
With the offense, what did you find just was kind of missing from the group to get things to or their starter?
I don't know. I just think that right now in this series, you can see in the 4-game series that Shohei didn't swing the bat well. Good night, Kike. You're in there tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you. I don't think that, Shohei didn't swing the bat well, Mookie didn't swing the bat well, Freddie didn't swing the bat well. So I think that we hadn't seen this guy before, so I think there's some of that, but those guys just didn't really swing the bat well this series, but they'll be ready to go for the next one.
With Emmett, was it just about being a fresh arm and wanting to hit kind of the guy coming out?
Yeah, with Emmett, it was more of kind of deciding essentially between Robo and Emmett. And you're talking about going into Denver and altitude and kind of just making sure the pen is in a good spot, protecting your downside. And Robo has a lot more innings and pitches available versus a guy that's got one inning or one outing coming back from a rehab outing, and then potentially to take the Sunday on a shorter rest, which Emmett hasn't done. So I think that in totality, it was the prudent thing to do, but Emmett will be back soon.
Is the hope just for him to continue to just build out?
Yeah, and I think that, sending Emmett out gives him an opportunity to kind of build out naturally.
Should we be surprised that Gunstone goes to the 60-day?
Probably not.
Has he picked up a ball, done anything yet?
He has not. He has not.
Is this about what you expected?
Yeah, I think so. I think that with Tony, I don't know, if it does happen, I don't know when his, time of return is, but I think that just kind of his history and not picking up a baseball and the progression to get him back, kind of roster 40-man management, there's just not really much margin or expectation for him to be back before that, so makes sense.
Was the situation around the stadium this morning a distraction for you guys at all?
I don't think so, and I don't think, some guys are talking about it, but, I don't think that affected us not scoring runs for 8 innings.
Does it feel more real like when it's at the ballpark though, than maybe at the past year?
Probably, but I think that once guys get here and they get in the clubhouse and you get ready for a game, there's a charity softball game out there for Mookie, and I think baseball players, professional athletes do a really good job of certainly caring about kind of social issues, obviously, and rightfully so, but when it comes down to doing their job, just kind of focusing on their jobs. Yes, guys.
First of all, I'll say this. There's a lot of respect for that team, whether it's mutual or not. I would like to think it is. The fact of the matter is it's a good rivalry. It's a good hard-fought baseball rivalry. I don't want it to get to a point where it got to, and accelerated to tonight. But we got to the ninth not in isolation. We got to the ninth over a combination of things, Look, they like to pitch in. They're aggressive pitching in. That's fine. People pitch Toddy in. He's been hit 5 times by this group and played a lot of dodgeball because he's athletic. He's been hit 3 times in the last 7 games. And, you can put it any way you want, but he hadn't been hit more than 4 times by any other team, period, in his career. So, you know, and then I saw back before I was in this chair when he came back in 23, there was some snarkiness, you know, him being thrown out, and I asked him about it. He said, you know, I came off, I earned it. People are going to remind me of what happened in 22, and but after a while, enough's enough, and you know, intentional, unintentional, you know, the fact of the matter is, it's you know, took exception with it, and I'm responsible for my actions, and I recognize that one of the few times that you know, I'm going to instill myself in the game. But hopefully I answered your question.
Were you shocked that Dave came out and made some contact with you? What happened there?
No, I wasn't shocked at all. I mean, you know, I went to their dugout. He came out, and that's it.
Did you think the pitch was intentional to hit Tatis tonight in that spot?
I'd like to think not, but I can't say that. Only a couple people know that. And whether it was or it wasn't, enough is enough. You know, we got a guy that's getting x-rays right now. It's one of the best players in the game, of course, on our team. And this guy's has taken shots, okay? And before this series, you know, and I can back this up with complete evidence. You know, track records speak for themselves. Teams that I manage don't get into altercations like this because teams I manage don't throw at people. But also teams I manage don't take anything. And after a while, I'm not going to take it. And I'm not going to take it on behalf of Toddy. I'm not going to take it on behalf of our team, intentional or unintentional. It's really that simple. That's how this game's played. And you want to call that old school, then yeah, we'll play old school baseball.
How is Tatis getting x-rays now?
The initial x-ray was negative, but it's not in a good place. You know, you mess with people's careers. You mess with people's seasons. You know, so this is, you know, like I said, I don't need to go back in the last year and a half of what we've tolerated, you know, but we've kept our eye on the prize with this group. I'm not going to go back and talk about instances that have happened because I'm not going to be this wah. You know, I'm just going to play the game. But again, you know, we got a guy that's in there getting drilled and got x-rays, you know, and that's not good enough. It's not cool, man. And he's our dude, and I got him, and I got our whole club.
They're probably going to say that the Ohtani incident afterwards was retaliation. How would you characterize it?
I don't know. I don't really care what they say. I really don't, you know.